Greetings and salutations, everybody. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the Fantasy Football Week 7 wide receiver start or sits. I'm going to be going over my 4 starts and my 4 sits at the wide receiver position as we enter Week 7 of the regular season, while also going through my 1 through 36 wide receiver rankings, the very much so anticipated rankings that many of you have tons of questions about. So I will get to those, give you my ideas of how I think Week 7 of the regular season is going to end up so that your fantasy lineups can be as successful as possible. And before we get into that, I just want to go ahead and mention that we've surpassed the 3,000 subscriber mark. I knew we were on its coattails, and I can't thank you guys enough for the support. For those of you who have subscribed, I hope you guys continue to enjoy my content, continue to ask questions, and be helpful in the comment section. Really quickly, on the note of subscribers, really quickly, let's full screen this, hey everybody. Okay, I just want to go over something really quickly before we begin. When you go down to the comment section, it's pretty plain and simple. You ask a question, others will answer. I will try to get to them. I take my time. I read every single comment. Now, I've been seeing a couple comments in the comment section that are quite abusive. All right, they're people calling each other names. I don't care what somebody advises. If you go down in the comment section, you ask a question, and someone gives you bad advice, okay? Bad advice. It's all subjective, okay? But if someone, in your opinion, gives you bad advice, it does not give you the right to go and just start bad-mouthing them and saying, some choice words that I honestly wouldn't say on this show. Understand that kind of comments, they don't live in my comment section. I will get rid of you. You will never be able to comment again. I don't want to see it. Plain and simple, guys. It's pretty easy. It's common courtesy. Don't be a dick. Period. Okay? Yes, I'll say that word. It's a name practically. Anyway, now let's get into this. Now that we've gotten past it again, thank you for the 3,000 subscribers. I appreciate it, everybody. And let's talk about wide receivers, shall we? All right, it's Wednesday. It's hump day. We're here, and I'm ready. Okay, so we have Michael Crabtree and we have Sterling Shepard as my first 2 starts of the week at the quarterback position, at the wide receiver position. Goodness, we're already at that point. Okay, so Michael Crabtree, I just wanted to mention him real quick. Plays against the New Orleans Saints this week. The New Orleans Saints have been picking it up as of late. They've been pretty decent against, the last couple games that they've played defensively against the wide receiver position. But I still think that the Ravens have a pretty good matchup at home this week. Joe Flacco should be, in my opinion, a decent start. As I mentioned in my last quarterback video from yesterday, this coming week, here's the thing. John Brown, prior to the last couple weeks, has been the number 1 target for the Ravens. But Michael Crabtree's been sneakily in there, getting targets, but just not being able to complete and be successful within this offense, because majority of the targets that he has gotten thus far this season has ended up either on the ground or, hitting his hands and him dropping it. In the last 2 weeks, Michael Crabtree has had 21 targets. Okay, only had 6 receptions out of those 21 targets. But from what he's gotten with, let me redact that statement. 21 targets, has only gotten 12 receptions, 6 receptions total from each game. So 12 total receptions on 21 targets, okay? It's a little bit, it's about like a 55, 60% catch rate. It's not great. It's nothing that we're too happy about, but we'll take it, especially because he's been able to produce the last 2 weeks. What is that? Basically 150 receiving yards and a single touchdown. He's been pretty good in fantasy as of late, especially when he's getting 12 targets and 9 targets respectively in the last 2 games. I think going forward this coming week, John Brown hasn't been able to do anything as of late. As soon as I talked about him a couple weeks ago, this always happens. When I talk about somebody, they'll end up, disappearing. But this coming week, I really feel like Michael Crabtree within this offense, he was brought in to be the number 1 receiver, right? They revamped this entire offensive weapons for Joe Flacco in order to give him an opportunity to make a run this year. They are a good team. They have a good matchup. I like Michael Crabtree, especially if he can find himself in the red zone in a one-on-one matchup, which he is, he has been used for the last couple of years at Oakland and when he was in San Francisco as that one-on-one, throw me the fade up top in the back of the end zone, I'll go get it. This is what he's known for. But as of right now, with the continuous targets that he is getting, I like Michael Crabtree, and I think his success is going to continue into Week 7 of the fantasy football season. So therefore, he's a start of the week. All right, the next guy I wanted to mention, Sterling Shepard. All right, so I understand for many of you, Sterling Shepard, he dropped the ball last week. Figuratively and literally, he just wasn't great. The 3 weeks prior, though, Sterling Shepard was fine. Right? We know what Eli Manning was doing last Thursday, and he was basically the main reason that Sterling Shepard and the entire receiving offense of the New York Giants, they just sputtered. They looked out of sync. They looked like they didn't practice, right? But this week, going against the Atlanta Falcons on Monday Night Football, I think Eli Manning and I think this passing offense, in total, the entire offense, obviously Saquon Barkley can do it whether the offense is there or not, but the entire offense, in my opinion, is going to have a very good week. Just to read some stats on Sterling Shepard, guys, he's been consistent thus far this season. In the last 3 weeks, okay, this past week against the Eagles, he wasn't great. Only had 3 receptions for 37 receiving yards. I mean, obviously, that's not good, right? That's nothing that you want. In a PPR, he barely gets you, 6.7 points? That's not great. But the weeks prior, 4 receptions, 75 receiving yards. 10 receptions, 77 receiving yards, and a touchdown. The week prior to that, 6 receptions, 80 yards, and a touchdown, right? He has been good. He is a talented young wide receiver on the opposite side of Odell Beckham, a guy that isn't going to have to worry about number 1 corner coverage or being double covered over the top by a safety. Therefore, this coming week, I love the start of Sterling Shepard into a great matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, who have been just giving up too many points. Perhaps, I haven't checked it, but they might have turned into the most generous defense to the wide receiver position after last week's performance. So as of right now, Sterling Shepard, he's a start for Week 7 of the fantasy season, guys. Especially, there's a potential that he is sitting on waivers. I mean, chances are he's not in some of your deeper leagues. But for those of you that are playing with guys that don't know what they're doing, there is a chance that Sterling Shepard is on the waivers. So if he is, and you need someone to fill up because the 4 bye weeks that are taking place this week, I would 100% suggest it. He is a pretty good wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 this coming week. And you'll see it as I rank him, how he stacks amongst the other wide receivers for this coming week. Now, the next 2 guys I want to talk about, they're common faces around this start of the week thing, especially Robert Woods. I mean, for the last 3 weeks, I've been harping. You have to start Robert Woods every single week, literally for the last 3 weeks. But I used to have him with Cooper Kupp. God, Cooper, why? Why, Koopy? Oh, my goodness. It's unfortunate. He's going to be injured. He's out for this coming week, Cooper Kupp. So Robert Woods automatically gets a production boost. Obviously, so does Brandin Cooks. But I think Robert Woods, he's just been so damn good this season. All right, a couple stats that I want to read. All right, I'm just going to go through every single game that he has played thus far this season, okay? Week 1, all right, he had 9 targets, but only ended up with 3 catches and 37 yards. All right, that's not a great performance, but he did have 9 targets, right? The opportunity was there. He followed it up with Week 2, 6 catches, 81 yards. Week 3, 10 catches, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 4, 5 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown. Week 5, 5 catches, 92 yards. And this past week, Week 6, 7 catches, 109 receiving yards. The guy is amazing. If not, he's as of right now, he's for sure a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. He's a top, when it comes to fantasy football perspective, right? I mean, talent-wise, he's a good wide receiver, but it's because of the opportunities that he's getting and the great offense that the Los Angeles Rams has. That is why Robert Woods is so successful. I mean, he's just been fantastic. He's a guy that if you're even doubting starting him, you're making a mistake already. Within itself, if you are doubting the idea of starting Robert Woods, I think I saw a comment a little bit earlier before I began recording, obviously. Somebody was asking, do I start Brandin Cooks or Robert Woods this week? Both. Period. I mean, that's basically it. You start them both. Obviously, it'll depend on who your other wide receivers, are. But this Rams offense, especially without Cooper Kupp, who prior to this past week's injury and him basically only putting up 1.2 fantasy points, he was the number 2 ranked wide receiver in fantasy football. He had put up 90 points within 5 weeks of fantasy football, so in half-point PPR. So as of right now, the production is going to go to Robert Woods. It's going to continue to go his way. Obviously, Brandin Cooks, Todd Gurley will continue to go up. Maybe Josh Reynolds will fill in for Cooper Kupp, but we'll see as of right now. I 100% think Robert Woods, 100% start. Do not doubt it. I don't care. Do not doubt it. He is going to be a monster this week into such a good matchup. So the next guy I wanted to mention, Jarvis Landry, a guy that many of you have given up on. Many of you are saying, should I trade him? Can I drop him? Etc., etc. Here's the thing. Jarvis Landry continues to get opportunity, right? That's what I always preach, that you want receivers, running backs, tight ends, quarterbacks, doesn't matter, that are going to have opportunities to score fantasy points, right? Every week, Jarvis Landry gets 10 plus targets, right? 14. Okay, I'm going to read it from the top to the bottom. 15 targets, 7 targets, 14 targets, 10, and then 9 this past week. Yet his catch rate is absolutely horrible. This last week against the LA Chargers, he caught 2 out of the 9 targets that went his way for 11 total yards. That's embarrassing. For Jarvis Landry, a guy who is consistently catching 115 plus balls a season, breaking 1,000 receiving yards, a Pro Bowl wide receiver, nonetheless. I mean, an animal up and down the board when he was in Miami. Now is just a bum. I understand the rookie quarterback doesn't help him out, but it doesn't make sense. Therefore, I think it's going to have to turn around. This statistic of him just being trash every week, it's going to change its ways. And I think this week is the week to do it. They're playing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa this week. But here's the deal. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have given up the second most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. They are one of, if not the worst, defenses in the NFL. Jarvis Landry has a fantastic opportunity. Of all the guys that I've mentioned in the start of the weeks thus far, whether, Robert Woods, Michael Crabtree, Sterling Shepard, Jarvis Landry has the best opportunity. He is the number 1 wide receiver on a team that is playing one of the worst defenses, right? Sterling Shepard has a great matchup against a bad defense, but he's not Odell, right? He doesn't have that kind of opportunity or the ability to get the ball coming his way every single time because he's crying on the sideline, right? Jarvis Landry this week, he's going to have his opportunity. By all means, Jarvis, you have to produce. Otherwise, people can't start you anymore, and you become a bum. And then next year, people will start drafting you in the 8th round, and that's not bad. I'll just steal them. And anyway, I'm already thinking about next year. But either way, Jarvis Landry, start of the week, in my opinion. Do not give up on this guy. Fire him up. So let's move on. Let's talk about our sits of the week for week 7 of the fantasy football season. All right, the first sits that I wanted to mention, it's more of a generalization. I'm talking about all Redskins wide receivers. They should be sat and they should not play. Period. The number 1 receiver on the Redskins as of right now is Paul Richardson. As you can see on the screen right here, number 10, Paul Richardson. Came over from the Seahawks this past offseason. A guy who is pretty decent within the Seahawks organization and has been decent thus far this season with the Redskins. But here's the deal. How many weeks have we played? Okay, so the Redskins have had a bye week in week 4, so they've only played 5 games this season. In 5 games, Paul Richardson has scored 41.4 fantasy points. So obviously, okay, he's scoring 8 points per game on average. All right, and he's the number 1 receiver. Let's talk about the number 2 receiver on the Redskins. We have Jamison Crowder, who has only scored 29.4 points in 5 weeks. What does that mean? Jamison Crowder scores on average 6 points in half-point PPR scoring formats. Guys, the receivers of this offense are not good. Richardson, Crowder, Doxson, these guys are not getting it done. I don't see them being able to turn it around. It's just embarrassing. The most targets on the team is for Paul Richardson, and it's only 24 targets. There are tight ends on teams that have double that. And the number one receiver on your offense doesn't have that many targets. And on top of it, it's on total the passing game, right? Let's mention this real quick. Jordan Reed has more targets than any receiver on this team. He has 31 targets thus far this season. This past week, he had 9 targets, which was decent. And went up. Right now, Jordan Reed is the leading pretty much wide receiver on this team next to Chris Thompson. Like, I'm just so worried. Like, there is a full dead team sitting here. Chris Thompson has 26 receptions. He has the most receptions on the team. He doesn't have the most receiving yards, but that's acceptable, right? You're catching the ball out of the backfield. I'm just giving you guys a fair warning. Don't touch any Redskins wide receivers. It is a joke to even imagine that Alex Smith is going to be able to do anything. He's been pretty crap as of the last couple weeks. So going forward, just don't touch him, okay? So let's move on. Let's talk about Corey Davis, a guy who's just... Where is Corey Davis? You know what? It's not even just Corey Davis. Where has the Tennessee Titans been? They're the worst team, to have 3 wins, for sure, right? Of all, how do they have 3 wins? That's just so embarrassing for some of the teams that have lost to the Titans, the Eagles, the Jaguars. They must be just pissed that they let this game get away from them against a team that's just so bad. This past 2 weeks, right? So we all know in Philadelphia, Corey Davis had a fantastic game. I lost my mind. I was thinking, damn, it's over. Here it comes. The week following that against the Bills, dude shit the bed with 4 receptions for 50 yards, right? Then followed it up this past week against the Ravens with 1 reception for 24 yards on 4 targets. Until he can prove that Mariota is capable of passing the ball and the offensive line is capable of protecting Mariota and he can at least catch more than, 6 balls a game, don't touch him. Leave him on the bench. Maybe drop him if there's better things on the waivers. So, yeah, for sure. Especially if you're dealing with bye week hell, it's not a good idea to keep Corey Davis around. He has not been great, and this offense has just been awful as of late. Okay, the last 2 guys I wanted to mention in the sit category, Demaryius Thomas this week and Will Fuller, 2 guys that many of you were considering starting this week. Now, what is my argument against Demaryius Thomas and Will Fuller? Now, let's go into Demaryius Thomas particularly. A guy that's just not getting a lot of targets, but he's being able to score fantasy points on big plays, right? This past week, he had 3 receptions on 4 targets, 57 yards, and a touchdown. He basically saved his entire week with that 1 touchdown grab. This coming week, the way I see it, Patrick Peterson is going to be on Demaryius Thomas, right? Demaryius Thomas and Courtland Sutton usually play the outside 2, while Emmanuel Sanders will play a little bit of slot here and there. Obviously, they rotate their receivers around just to get them open. They motion them outside, inside, doesn't matter. But that's usually the setup. It's Demaryius Thomas and Courtland Sutton on the outsides, while you have Emmanuel Sanders playing a little bit of slot on the inside and then sometimes rotating. But as of right now, the number 1 corner on that team, Patrick Peterson, is going to be on Demaryius Thomas. I don't think Demaryius Thomas is going to have a good game. These past 2 weeks, he's had good games because of that touchdown that he's grabbed in each of the last 2 games. And you may be thinking, wow, Demaryius Thomas last 2 weeks, double-digit fantasy points. He's been great for me. I've got to start him. I'm telling you, it's a Thursday night game. I think Courtland Sutton will maybe even have a better game than Demaryius Thomas this week. Demaryius is getting old, guys. He's really just, he's not a great wide receiver like he used to be. His good old heydays were with Peyton Manning, and those stats that he used to have every season were fantastic. But going forward, and especially in Week 7 this week of the fantasy football season, I don't see him having a great matchup and a great game this coming week. Therefore, I'm going to say to go ahead and sit him. I understand he's been producing as of late, but you can't consistently produce with 4 targets and 3 receptions, 6 targets, 5 receptions. Yes, if you were Taylor Gabriel or Marquise Goodwin with, the ability to get over the defense, Tyler Lockett, Tyreek Hill, these kind of guys are able to extend plays with their availability in the speed department because they're so damn fast. They'll burn you over the top, 1 play, 75 yards, done. Demaryius Thomas he just doesn't have it anymore. It's not in his reservoir at all, and it's not in his repertoire. Maybe that was the word I was looking for. So as of right now, Demaryius Thomas this week, I understand it's going to be difficult to sit him, but I would suggest sitting him this week. The last guy I wanted to mention when it comes to sitting is Will Fuller. I mentioned yesterday in my quarterback video that I am a little worried about Deshaun Watson. This past week against the Buffalo Bills defense shellacked the Texans offense. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, let's go find this really quickly. The production team will be fired for not having this graphic available instantly. It's okay. They will get their warnings. Can I hurry up and pull up? Where are we at here? Wait, did someone... There it is, Buffalo defense. Thank you. Goodness gracious. All right, this past week, right, the Buffalo defense only allowed Deshaun Watson 14 points, all right, and they had 7 sacks. The Buffalo defense had 7 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 1 fumble forced and recovered, okay? Now, this may be pretty good for defensive stats when it comes to the Buffalo Bills defense for fantasy purposes, sure. But I'm just worried about Deshaun Watson in this offense, right? If you're letting the Buffalo Bills dominate you like that and making it really difficult on you, the week prior, Deshaun Watson had trouble versus the Cowboys, right? I know the Cowboys defense isn't, a complete joke nowadays, but they're not fantastic. They're not the best defense in the league. They play against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Tennessee Titans this week in week 7 play against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars are pretty satisfied with the performance they had this past week, getting 40 points dropped on them and them not being able to score a single damn point until the fourth quarter. They were embarrassed on, Sunday football, and the fact of the matter is I don't think Deshaun Watson's going to have a very fun time this week. Therefore, his receivers, I understand, DeAndre Hopkins is one of the receivers, but he might be a little bit immune to the effects because he's so damn effing good. But as of right now, Will Fuller, he's a guy that's going to be covered by either Ramsey or AJ Boye. I wouldn't start him this week. I'd be very, very reluctant to start any of my Texans this coming week into this matchup. And let's say, for example, the Texans blow up and they blow out the Jaguars. Well, it's an end of an era. The Jaguars are going to just have to go and get a better quarterback. Anyway, let's get right into my rankings as we are here. All right. We're talking about the Week 7 wide receiver rankings. If you didn't know that already, then you've somehow moved over here from the timestamps that are below. Now, let's talk about it, right? We're here with number 1, a guy that, by all means, I mentioned yesterday, maybe the conversation needs to begin. Maybe we got to start talking about Adam Thielen as the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. And honestly, he's the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football also. Obviously, Devontae Adams on Monday night had an argument to be made. He had that incredible game. I'm sure he won many of you guys games on that Monday night. He dropped 30 points in half-point PPR scoring, and I still lost because Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp, why'd you have to get hurt? Anyway, so here's the deal. Adam Thielen, he's my number 1 this week. They play against the New York Jets, a defense that, have been giving up points the last couple of weeks. They let Andrew Luck do whatever he pretty much wanted. And I feel like with the opportunity that Adam Thielen continues to get, the guy is a 100-yard on average receiver per game. He's catching touchdowns. He's moving, they're putting him on the outside. They're bringing him on the inside. They're using him everywhere, right? Stefon Diggs, even with his, struggling performances as of late, is helping Adam Thielen. When you have a threat on the other side of the field, it forces defenses to have to respect it and not, they have to pick their poison pretty much. And when you line up Adam Thielen on the inside in a slot position, and then you have Stefon Diggs on the outside, who do you think they're going to double cover? Usually, and as of late, they haven't been doubly covering Adam Thielen. He's been ripping teams apart. Therefore, this coming week, I like him against the Jets as my number 1 overall wide receiver. We'll see how this turns out. Number 2, we have Julio Jones on Monday Night Football playing against the New York Giants. I don't think Julio Jones is gonna have any trouble. Janoris Jenkins, the corner of the number 1 corner of the New York Giants, this past week against the Eagles, he was getting destroyed by just about everybody. There were penalties left, right, and center on him. Alshon Jeffery, Nelson Aguilar, they were just dominating him. This coming week, Julio Jones in the high-powered scoring offense and the shootout that I believe is going to occur especially because it's the Falcons defense. I think Julio Jones going to continue to be great. I mean, with 0 touchdown receptions thus far this season, him being a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy, that tells you a lot. This dude is, I think the stat that I heard was that he is going to, or as of right now, if he continues his pace of receiving, he's going to break 2,000 receiving yards this season, which is a record, but we'll see how that, I think, I don't even remember how much Calvin Johnson had that one year. That was insane. Imagine fantasy-wise having that guy in that season. Okay, anyway, number 3, Odell Beckham Jr., another participant in this Monday night game. I think, all things considered, Odell Beckham Jr., yes, this past week, many of you asked the question, is Odell done? Is Eli just killing him? Should I trade him? What should I do with Odell? And I told many of you guys, do not panic. I understand that Odell Beckham didn't have a great week. He is a very inconsistent receiver as of this year, and it's acceptable. Eli Manning isn't going to be able to produce on a weekly basis. We know that, but in such a juicy matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, I mean, you have no other choice but to play him and be happy about it, because honestly, he's going to have a great week. As I mentioned Sterling Shepard earlier, I think Odell Beckham is going to be even that much more valuable going forward, and especially into this great matchup. He's my number 3 this week. Number 4, we have Tyreek Hill. Ooh, baby, Tyreek Hill, guys. He's so good. He's so damn good. Against defenses that really can't stop him and cover him, he's incredible, right? And when Patrick Mahomes is on, they're such a good tandem. As of right now, he's my number 4 wide receiver playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, Cincinnati Bengals are going to have to keep up. They're playing in Kansas City. It's going to be a shootout. When I mean my shootout, as I mentioned in my quarterback video yesterday, it's going to be pretty much Patrick Mahomes putting up 40 and hopefully Andy Dalton scoring about 28 points so that AJ Green and Tyler Boyd can be relevant this coming week. Other than that, I think Tyreek Hill on a consistent weekly basis. I understand that there have been performances thus far this season that Tyreek Hill has not been great. The Jaguars, especially one of them. It just depends. He is extremely volatile as of right now. Comparatively, when you have 6-point games, 9-point games, then drop 35, then drop 28, it's just difficult to be able to predict when those games are coming. But honestly, when you play against a bad defense like New England, obviously you knew that was coming. This coming week, I don't see the Bengals defense as that much of a threat to where the Chiefs have, a difficult time scoring on them. Therefore, Tyreek Hill, he's my number 4. Number 5, Michael Thomas coming off the bye week, playing against the Ravens this coming week. Ravens defense is pretty damn good. They're nothing that's, a pushover joke that they're going to have ease. Michael Thomas is going to have 1,000,000 points. Michael Thomas, as of late, fantasy-wise, hasn't been great. And especially as soon as the Saints begin to get to their two-headed monster that I've been mentioning for the last, 4 months now, the two-headed monster is going to get there. And eventually he's going to give Michael Thomas and Drew Brees a little bit of a fantasy slump, right? They're going to have to, force the ball out a couple times here and there. But Michael Thomas this coming week, I think he's fine. He's my number 5 for a reason. But as the offense continues to get back into form, expect that Michael Thomas's stats, especially comparatively to the first couple weeks of the season when Mark Ingram was absent, they're not going to go back to being that consistent. He'll have some of those games where he drops 20, and he has 10 receptions, a bunch of receiving yards, maybe a touchdown. Pick and choose the stats. But as of right now, with Mark Ingram back, they're going to run the ball a lot. This coming week, the only caveat to that entire argument is that the Ravens defense up front, they don't give up a lot of rushing yards. Therefore, Drew Brees is going to have to throw the ball a little bit more, whether it's to Alvin Kamara or to Michael Thomas. But I like Michael Thomas this week no matter what. He's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. That's why he's my number 5. Number 6, we have Mike Evans playing against the Cleveland Browns at home this week. I have Jameis Winston as the start of the week for a reason. And Mike Evans being his number 1 receiver, he has to start. He is so damn good. He is a ginormous target across the middle of the field that is going to find himself fantasy value every single week. Whether it's with Jameis or with Ryan Fitzmagic, it doesn't really matter. So, Mike Evans, you're my number 6. Hopefully, DeSean Jackson and Chris Godwin don't steal too much stats from you this week. O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate. There is a lot of pieces in this offense, guys. Understand that when you play one of these guys, there is a very good chance that your player just ends up being a dud because other guys, other mouths to feed. It makes a huge difference within the offense. That's why I'm just giving you that little warning. Be careful, especially if you start the lower end guys like Chris Godwin or Cameron Brate, DeSean Jackson. Expect that there is a possibility that you end up with something close to a goose egg because there are so many mouths to feed. All right, number 7, AJ Green. As I mentioned yesterday in my quarterback video, Andy Dalton is a start of the week. The Red Rifle coming out against the Kansas City Chiefs. I believe that the Kansas City Chiefs defense is not good enough. And I think the offense of the Cincinnati Bengals, from the sample size that we have been given this season with the 6 games thus far, is a pretty efficient offense. They're a team that does not turn over the ball often unless they play against the Panthers. And they're a team that is going to give the ball to AJ Green, their number 1 wide receiver. It's without a doubt that AJ Green's going to have a good week. These last couple of weeks, the Chiefs just keep giving up points nonstop. And especially with how much that the Cincinnati Bengals like to throw the ball. We've seen them have shootouts with the Atlanta Falcons. They're not afraid to let it fly, and that's what's going to happen this week. Therefore, AJ Green, you're my number 7. Number 8, DeAndre Hopkins. As I mentioned before with Will Fuller, baby, I understand there is a lot of risk, inherent risk within this specific matchup because of the fact that, to be honest, the Jacksonville defense, I don't think is just going to get pushed over this week. They're a defense that is going to, try to at least establish themselves. This is a matchup that is within the division. If I'm not mistaken, the Texans started 0-3. They've been 3-0 in the last 3 weeks. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are 3-3, and they're looking like they're struggling as of late. So Jaguars, they got to be able to compete within this division. I think it's a 3-way tie for first as of right now between the Titans, Jaguars, and Texans when it comes to records. So this is the week. DeAndre Hopkins, you're still my number 8 because you're going to continue to get those targets because you're the number 1 wide receiver and the most talented wide receiver, and if not the most talented player on this team. Therefore, you're my number 8, but just barely. Number 9, we have Robert Woods, my first start of the week. Guys, I'm going all in on Robert Woods this week. I'm going in on Robert Woods the rest of the season. Going forward, the next couple of weeks, I'm not going to mention him as a start of the week because it is going to be a guarantee every week. Especially as long as he's not on a bye week, you've got to start him. Going forward, plain and simple. So going forward, we're not going to see Robert Woods anymore. Little tears coming down my face right now, but it's all good. We'll live. So let's talk about Robert Woods going against the 49ers. Again, as I mentioned before, Cooper Kupp's out. They're going to throw the ball to Robert Woods. I think if I'm not mistaken, he's one of the leading wide receivers in the yards per game and yards total this season. Same thing. Definitely behind Adam Thielen, but he's close, people. I'm telling you, he's close. He's had a couple 100-yard receiving games, and as of late, he's been fantastic, even with a limited amount of receptions and targets, considering how many mouths there are to feed within those offenses, and the amount that they run the ball. When Todd Gurley is getting 20-plus touches a game, comparatively to a team like the Vikings that prior to this past week haven't really ran the ball, I think with all of the opportunities Robert Woods has been given, he's been fantastic, and he's going to continue to be that good. My number 10, we have Keenan Allen for the San Diego Chargers. No, it's not the San Diego Chargers. It's the Los Angeles Chargers, Andrew. I can't get it out of my head. For my entire life, for my entire existence, they were the San Diego Chargers. And now, all of a sudden, I'm supposed to change my, the way I think. I'm wired. I'm programmed in a specific way that I cannot control at this point. It's unfortunate, but they are the Los Angeles Chargers now. It's not unfortunate that they are the Chargers of Los Angeles because why not? Let's have another Los Angeles team here. There's another team to root for. They're going to make the playoffs anyway, so we got we have a pretty good team in the Chargers in the AFC, and then we'll have a team on the NFC going into the bracket with the Rams, and maybe both teams can meet each other in the Super Bowl. I don't think so, but there's a good chance. As of right now, Keenan Allen is probably the only valuable receiver rest of season Mike Williams has been trash. Tyler Williams had a fantastic week this past week, but let's be honest, it's unsustainable. 3 catches, 2 touchdowns. You're Nick Chubb Jr. Going forward, Antonio Gates, garbage. They like to run the ball. This coming week, they play against the Titans. The Titans' defense is going to get shellacked either way. And I think Keenan Allen, he is beginning to get those double-digit fantasy point games in half-point PPR and full-point PPR. If you have him in a standard, good luck rest of season. But as of right now, in the PPR games, in the formats, I think he's going to be fine, especially this week. I see him having a pretty good game. He's my number 10. Number 11, we have Stefon Diggs against the Jets. I'm telling you, this Jets matchup is extremely juicy. There is a reason I have Kirk Cousins as my number 4 wide receiver and Adam Thielen as my number 1 Kirk Cousins as my number 1 quarterback and Adam Thielen as my number 1 wide receiver this week. I think they are going to have a lot of success, and the success is going to spill over to Stefon Diggs. Therefore, he's my number 11. I mean, the Jets are just going to give up points. They're not going to be able to stop what the Vikings are bringing unless the offensive line of the Vikings somehow manages to find themselves giving up sacks left, right, and center, which is possible, but that's a different conversation. Number 12, Alshon Jeffery. I mean, this last couple weeks, the first week he came back against the Titans was great. The week after that, wasn't great. It happens. Alshon Jeffery, man, this past week, I think his stats were a little bit inflated. Those 2 touchdowns he had, maybe one of them, okay, he was going to have, for sure. But the other one was a little bit overkill. They could have just ran it in on the 1-yard line in the beginning of the game. So as of right now, I still think Alshon Jeffery being the number 1 target of this offense right next to Zach Ertz and Corey Clement, he's going to be continuously good. And against the Carolina Panthers defense, they're not great. I don't know how much they're going to deal with the size of Alshon Jeffery. They had troubles with Jordan Reed this past week. So imagine a more athletic, bigger, faster guy. That's Alshon Jeffery for you. He's my number 12 against the Carolina Panthers defense this week. Number 13, Tyler Boyd. I grabbed 2 touchdowns this past week against the Steelers, and I'm a stud. And if you listened to Andrew a couple weeks ago and spent all your fab on him, you're extremely happy going forward. Tyler Boyd going against the Cincinnati Bengals, another guy that I am 100% going full in on him this week because they play against the Kansas City Chiefs. He's been absolutely dynamite in fantasy football. There's been a couple inconsistent weeks, but honestly, when he's able to turn it around and have these 100 receiving yard games, 2 touchdown games, 10-plus reception games, he makes it up. Therefore, he's my number 13 this week. Number 14, we have Brandin Cooks. As I mentioned before, we have Robert Woods, but again, Brandin Cooks, because of the absence of Cooper Kupp, will be relevant. Therefore, going into the 49ers matchup this week, he's going to be really good. He's going to have to take the top off defense. You know, the last time that the Rams played against the 49ers was last season, and Sammy Watkins, who was our speed threat last season, had the best game of his entire season last year in that matchup. Brandin Cooks, over the top. I see it pretty successfully working. Therefore, he's my number 14. Number 15, Emmanuel Sanders. I'm not too high on Demaryius Thomas, but I will definitely take a piece of Emmanuel Sanders every single week. He was one of my start of the weeks last week that at least went successfully. You know, we're not going to talk about the guy on the Jets that happened to shit the bed last week because he keeps getting injured. But number 15, it is Emmanuel Sanders. I think this coming week with the target share that he is continuously getting, I asked Case Keenum nicely a couple weeks back to throw the ball Emmanuel Sanders' way 10-plus times, maybe 9 times minimum. And he's been able to do that. He's been able to at least get the ball to him consistently, and that's exactly what we want. We want opportunity. That's it. Opportunity leads to success in fantasy football, and that's it. That is why he's 15. He plays against a defense that, hasn't been great against the run, so they're going to be able to run the ball, but Emmanuel Sanders is going to get his 10-plus targets. Hopefully, he can grab every single one of those balls so that he can help out your fantasy teams. He's my number 15. Number 16, my next start of the week, Jarvis Landry. Guys, I'm telling you, it's a fantastic matchup. If you were ever going to start him, I don't care what he's done thus far this season. If you were ever going to start him and you ever had an opportunity to start him for the rest of the season, this is the matchup you want to start him in. If he ends up being garbage, then it's over. You can put up the white flag. I'll put up the white flag, and we can all just drop him at once. Okay, we'll have a live stream on Twitch, and we'll all 1, 2, 3. We'll drop Jarvis Landry, and we'll be done with it, okay? Number 17, we have T.Y. Hilton. Now, I'm not 100% sure on the health of T.Y. Hilton, but I'm pretty sure he's going to play this week. He was a participant at practice earlier today, so I think he's going to be playing. Yes, he plays against the Buffalo defense, but I don't really care. I really do not care. T.Y. Hilton is a talented enough receiver. With the use of Andrew Luck, will find himself success. Obviously, he's not going to be amazing. That's why he's not in my top 10. But he is a good enough receiver with the opportunity that he's going to get to be able to pop off, especially with how good Andrew Luck has been in the last couple of weeks. With the addition of T.Y. Hilton, it opens up the offense that much more, and they just become that much more dynamic, especially with that running game coming in with Marlon Mack. Goodness, this Colts offense is going to continue to improve on a weekly basis. My last guy I want to talk about on this first page, we got Kenny Golladay. Here's the thing about Kenny Golladay. He himself, it's difficult to rank wide receivers on the Lions, right? Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay. All three of them, respectively, have had great weeks, right? There's always going to be one of these guys that has the best week between the three, and it's really hard to guess. But as of right now, I think Kenny Golladay this coming week against the Miami Dolphins defense. The Miami Dolphins, they struggled a little bit against bigger targets, a.k.a. Trey Burton or Allen Robinson. That's exactly where Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay basically stand within this offense. I know Golden Tate's going to get his receptions. He's going to have his yards. He could have a touchdown, but I think Kenny Golladay is the best candidate this coming week within the Lions offense to have that receiving touchdown and the upside. Therefore, he's my number 18 this coming week. All right, let me go ahead and get a swig of water. And then we can get back into this here. Wide receiver rankings, guys. Oh, my goodness. I'm so tired. Oh, my God. My eyes hurt. I'm just going to rest for a couple seconds, okay? Having to dedicate, 11 hours to work every day. And then I come home. I got a couple errands to run every day, but then I got to do the graphics. Got to set up the wide receiver video. Got to pull up the stats. Got to do the research. Then I got to record. Then I got to do post-production. Then I got to upload, do the timestamps. My goodness, guys. I'm looking down the barrel of some difficult weeks. I'm tired. If I, in some points, start getting a little lackluster or start jipping you on a little bit of information on each player, forgive me. I'm extremely exhausted. I'm running on a couple hours of sleep every day, so I'll do with it as I can, but as of right now, all right, I'm ready. That was good enough for me. All right, here we go. So I did have Kenny Golladay at 18, but here's the deal. I still have Golden Tate at number 19 this week against the Miami Dolphins defense. I think Matthew Stafford, what the Bengals were able to do against the Dolphins defense was pretty successful. And then followed it with Mitch Trubisky being able to dice up this defense for 28 total points offensively. I think Matthew Stafford is in the same boat. He's going to be able to score, 3 touchdowns this week. Hopefully, that's his upside. Otherwise, he's a 2-touchdown kind of guy with the upside of the 3. Maybe even 4. You'll never know. But as of right now, I think Golden Tate, whether he catches that touchdown reception or not, he always is guaranteed for that, 7, 8 receptions, 60-plus yards. And in a PPR, he's fantastic. He's my number 19. Number 20, my next start of the week, we had Michael Crabtree. Again, guys, as I mentioned before, in a good matchup, he's been getting a lot of targets as of late. As I mentioned, 21 targets in the past 2 weeks. His reception percentage as of the last 2 weeks, a little bit above 50%. I expect that to increase as the season progresses and as he continues to get more acclimated with this offense and finds more rapport with Joe Flacco, especially in a good matchup. I think he's going to have some success this week, and I think you should start him for sure. Devin Funchess is my number 21, a guy that, dude, that catch that he made, he embarrassed that corner. Oh my goodness. Devin Funchess, he's a great wide receiver, but many people worry about the idea that there are just too many receivers and too many mouths to feed on this Panthers offense. It helps Cam Newton that he has a lot of weapons around him, but when Torrey Smith is catching touchdowns, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, it hurts Devin Funchess. Now, this coming week, I still think that Devin Funchess can still be productive. He continues to get his yards, his receptions, his opportunities. He is still the number one wide receiver on this team. Going forward, there's a potential that somebody could, like Greg Olsen, maybe Christian McCaffrey, eventually take over the reception column and be the number one receiving option on this team. But as of right now, it's Devin Funchess. Therefore, he's in my top 24. He's at least a lower end wide receiver 2 this week. He's at my number 21 spot. What the heck? Okay, so there's been a mistake. Demaryius Thomas should not be at 22. As I mentioned, he is a sit this week. So the ghost of Demaryius Thomas's past has somehow managed to find his way onto this list. And it's a little... Production team is going to be fired, okay? That is the last straw. The green jacket the other day was an issue, and now this is a problem. So we'll take care of that. Let's just move on. You guys are getting 35. This is a top 35, unless maybe this is a secret message from the ghosts of Madden's past. I don't know. Anyway, we have number 23, Taylor Gabriel, a guy that, as I mentioned in my my waiver wire ranking video on who to target for this coming week, he's been a guy that's just been on fire as of late. 200 receiving yards over the last 2 weeks. He's just been, or the last 2 performances that he's played in. So far, Mitchell Trubisky's found him to be his number one target after Tariq Cohen. So going forward into this matchup against the Patriots, I really like Taylor Gabriel. That's why he's all the way up here. He's above Allen Robinson for a reason, I think. Yes, the Patriots are pretty good at exploiting young, inexperienced quarterbacks, but I still think Taylor Gabriel is going to have himself a pretty good game. Number 25, John Brown, a guy, as I mentioned earlier, because of Michael Crabtree. He's a guy that's going to get his receptions. He's going to get his opportunities. I think, as of late, he hasn't been great. That's why I have moved him down to the 25 spot. He is a fringe wide receiver 3 as of right now. He is on that borderline between a wide receiver 2 low end and a high end wide receiver 3. As of right now, I feel comfortable with him as a wide receiver 3 option because he's not guaranteed points as of right now. He was very, very contingent on those couple touchdowns he had earlier on in the season. As of right now, he's not been able to do that, and he's not been able to get the big yardage that we were expecting. Therefore, just be careful with him. He's a wide receiver 3 this week. Number 26, Mohamed Sanu. With Taylor Gabriel's bone bruise, there's a potential that not Taylor Gabriel, excuse me. Sterling Shepard, no. There's so many names in my head. Okay. With Calvin Ridley's bone bruise, all right, Calvin Ridley, I think Mohamed Sanu, I know he's questionable. There is a tag on him. I think he's going to play. He has until Monday to, figure it out. If he doesn't end up playing, then we can go find Justin Hardy on the waivers. But as of right now, with Mohamed Sanu's last couple performances, the dude has been on fire. 10-plus fantasy points in half-point PPR and standard scoring leagues. He's been fantastic, right? He is going to continue to be great because of the opportunity that he's getting. And in the matchup that he has this week against the Giants, I have full confidence in Mohamed Sanu. That's why he's my number 26. Number 27, Sammy Watkins, a guy that earlier this season was really consistent. He was having those big games. As of late, has been a little lost within this offense because, he, again, as I mentioned before, even in the first couple weeks, he's the 4th receiving option. It goes Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Kareem Hunt, and then only then, we have Sammy Watkins. This coming week, I have him at 27 because I still have some hope that against the Cincinnati Bengals, he can be a good wide receiver 3 option, a guy that has a very good upside, especially with his ability to catch the ball and his ability to just separate from the corner with his dynamic speed. I like Sammy Watkins at number 27 this week. Number 28, Josh Gordon. Now, I already know many of you are going to be like, Josh Gordon should be higher. He's fantastic, etc. Listen, until I see him getting the fantasy points that warrant his ranking a little bit higher in that, Golden Tate, maybe even higher range, until I see that personally on a consistent basis. Like, again, I've always preached that we want opportunity and we want consistency. And that is what leads to good fantasy players, right? Until I continuously, or at least for the next couple weeks, see that, I'm I'm just going to be a little bit speculative. I'm going to say he's going to be decent, but I'm not going to say he's going to be fantastic this week. That's why he's at my number 28. Just be careful. Number 29, Julian Edelman. He's in the same boat, right? This team is going to want to run the ball. Honestly, I have a feeling that this week, Sony Michel and James White are going to be fantastic. And they're going to run the crap out of the ball. Gronk's obviously going to be Gronk, but they're going to want to move the ball as much as they possibly can. So let's fix that camera. There it is. All right. So I think Julian Edelman, Josh Gordon, if you have them both, it's pretty much a coin toss. Do you want the safe receptions in a PPR that Julian Edelman will give you, or do you want the upside of Josh Gordon? Josh Gordon's being used more and more within this offense. They're moving him around. They're giving him more, routes to run, different types of routes to get him open. It's going to lead to success, hopefully, because they're going to acclimate him. They're going to get him within this offense, and he's going to be good enough to be great. But this coming week, I don't know. Maybe it's a little too early for me to already jump on the Josh Gordon train, but that's why I have him at 28 and Julian Edelman at 29. Number 30, we have Allen Robinson, a guy who this last week was okay. Can he continue it? They play against the Detroit Lions. He's going to have Darius Slay on him, right? The last time we saw Darius Slay, he got worked by Devontae Adams pretty hard. So I'm not sure how good, you have to be to play against Darius Slay. I don't think he's going to completely shut down Allen Robinson, but at least Allen Robinson has made himself relevant again. He is back on the wide receiver ranking list. He was missing for a couple weeks, guys, and by no surprise, because he was literally MIA on the field. So as of right now, he's my number 30. I'm not ranking him too high. He's a wide receiver 3 at best for me. Number 31, Marvin Jones. As I mentioned before, you never know between the 3 wide receivers of the Detroit Lions who's going to be fantastic. So as of right now, I'm thinking there is an opportunity and there is a possibility that Marvin Jones is that number 1 wide receiver this week. I don't think that is going to be the outcome, but I feel like if it happens, I'm not going to be surprised because he's very good, in the red zone. He's a bigger target, and with the weapons that are sitting around, when you have Golden Tate and Kenny Golladay on your offense and you have to worry about those two, Marvin Jones can just sneak past you and score an easy touchdown. That's why I have him at number 31. He's going to have opportunity. He's going to have, 5 targets at least. Whether he catches a touchdown, maybe a 40-yard bomb, we'll just have to wait and see. Number 32, Marquise Goodwin. Excuse me. Oh my goodness, Marquise Goodwin. On Monday, he had an insane game. But again, I always preach this. Is it sustainable? When you catch, 4 catches and 2 touchdowns for 120 some odd yards, can you continue to do that on a weekly basis? I don't think that is what's going to happen. But this coming week against the Rams defense, guys, the Rams corners give up a lot of points. The Rams defense gives up a lot of points in fantasy. They might not give up a lot of points in, actual football, but fantasy-wise, Marcus Peters has not been great at the corner position for the Rams. I think Marquise Goodwin could exploit that and could have a good week. He's a wide receiver 3 at best for me, and I wouldn't mind starting him this week, guys. If you haven't picked him up yet, he, again, with CJ Beathard, who has not turned out to be too bad in this Kyle Shanahan offense, they could find themselves finding some success fantasy-wise this week. Number 33, we have Chris Godwin, and at 34, we have DeSean Jackson. I just wanted to mention both of them as a tandem back-to-back, just like I did last week, guys. These are 2 guys that it depends. If DeSean Jackson catches that 70-yard bomb over the top, great. I like DeSean Jackson more in standard leagues comparatively to Chris Godwin because I think DeSean Jackson has that boom or bust ability, and he has the upside of a touchdown rather than, I understand Chris Godwin has scored 4 touchdowns in the last 5 games that he's played, but I still don't trust the idea of him consistently scoring. They were able to score, 40 some odd points or 35 plus points against the Falcons this past week. If they're able to get up to that many points, sure, Chris Godwin can end up with a touchdown, but we'll just have to wait and see. He's a good wide receiver, but you just have to be careful with these kind of guys, especially when there's so many mouths to feed within this offense. I want to mention the last 2 guys. Jermaine Kearse. Okay. Terrell Pryor, banged up. Quincy Enunwa, first time I'm mentioning his name on this damn video. I hate Quincy Enunwa right now. Just didn't do well last week, plain and simple. He's out this week. And Robbie Anderson, questionable, banged up. Who is healthy? Jermaine Kearse. What did he do this past week? 10 targets, 9 receptions, a bunch of yards. Who does he play this week? The Minnesota Vikings. It doesn't matter because the way I see it, Terrell Pryor or Robbie Anderson are going to play. Whichever one of those two play, they're going to be the number one wide receiver. They're going to have Xavier Rhodes on him. On the other side of the field, the corner over there, he gave up a bunch of points to Christian Kirk this past week, right? Who says he's not going to give up a bunch to Jermaine Kearse, who's going to be the number one option, a guy who stepped up in Quincy Enunwa's absence this past week? I think Jermaine Kearse as a wide receiver 3 option this coming week, as I mentioned in my waiver wire video, he's going to be a good option. Therefore, I would consider him. The last guy I wanted to mention, with Brock Osweiler being the named starter for this coming week against the Detroit Lions, I think Albert Wilson has to just be mentioned. I don't think he's going to be fantastic, but I just want to mention him so that many of you know, if you end up rolling with Albert Wilson, understand you're either going to have 15 points or you're going to have, 4 points. Those are your options. There is no middle ground. If there's a middle ground, that's what you call Kenny Stills. You can go pick up Kenny Stills and start him instead. That's what you're looking for. So as of right now, he's very boom or bust, very, very toxic when it comes to whether he scores that big play or just ends up being a bum. But either way, thank you everybody for watching. If you haven't yet and you like the content, please go down, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you have any questions, go down in the comment section. Don't be toxic down there, guys. We want to build a community that supports each other. I don't want you guys calling each other names. You guys are acting like children down there, for the love of God. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. And until next time, see you guys.